Joining us now, our guest, Senator JD Vance of Ohio. It's great to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the Railway Safety Act.
Sure.
We're actually going to talk about some policy on television. It's a shocking thing. It's going to put it up there on the screen. President Trump actually endorsed the bill. He said, "Crooked Joe Biden has still not visited the incredible patriots of East Palestine. Our movement will be their voice. We will never forget them." JD Vance has been working hard in the Senate to make sure something like this never happens again. That's why it's so important for Congress to pass his Railway Safety Act. So, JD, tell us a little bit about this bill that has now been uniquely endorsed by President Trump and President Biden. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah, so first of all, it was one of the weird ways in which President Trump has sort of reoriented the Republican Party. It's hard to imagine a Republican president 10 years ago coming out and endorsing a legislation like this. But it's pretty simple and straightforward. So number one, East Palestine had this terrible problem, terrible train crash, and a chemical fire afterwards, and the firefighters had no idea what they were dealing with as they went in to fight the fire.
Right.
Changes the notice requirements, change that. The second thing is it enhances the safety and inspection requirements, so hopefully the next East Palestine doesn't happen in the first place. And of course, this has caused the railway lobby and the usual suspects in Washington, D.C. to come out against it. And in a lot of ways, I think it illustrates a broader fight that's happening within the conservative movement right now, which is, do we stand up for the people who sent us to Washington, or do we stand up for the special interests who have dominated conservative politics for so long? I'm very gratified that we've got a lot of good bipartisan support. I think we're going to get it out of the Senate and then, of course, onto the House.
Okay. Well, what I'm interested in is the intra-Republican fight. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen, please. We've got Ted Cruz coming out saying he will not be, he's going to oppose the Bipartisan Railway Safety Act. I know that there was some discussion in markup in which he called what he was saying ridiculous. Talk and break down a little bit about why what he was saying was ridiculous.
Well, look, Ted Cruz is a friend, right? He's one of the few people that I knew in the Senate before I got to Washington. But I think that the fundamental argument here that Ted made is he doesn't like the fact that the bill gives any discretion or any authority to the Biden administration, right? Well, the Biden administration enforces the laws. So I've been saying for the past 3 months, and a lot of Republicans have been echoing me, the Biden administration needs to do more. So here's a piece of legislation that forces the Biden administration to do more. You can't, on the one hand, say they're not doing enough, and on the other hand, fight a piece of legislation that forces them to actually take action. There's a deeper problem here, which is if you think that we're going to have to fight back against corporate America, against big tech, against the pharmaceutical industry, if you think we're going to have to do these things, well, the government's pretty much the only path in town. That is the representation of the people. That is the entity that has the actual authority and the power to go after something like a big tech or like the railway industry. So you've got to be willing to use the power that the people gave us under this constitutional system. And I understand people are reactive. And look, sometimes, of course, oftentimes the government does things it shouldn't do. Sometimes it fights progressive battles that it shouldn't fight. But if we're going to win the argument, we have to be willing to actually use the levers of power and use what the people gave us. That's what this fight is all about.
And I'm wondering about the partisan politics a little bit, because about 6 years ago, Rob Portman, former senator from Ohio, was working with Democrats on an opioid treatment bill. And Democratic leadership really did not want Democrats working with him on this because they didn't want him to get a win in an election year.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, Sherrod Brown is one of your co-sponsors on this bill. He's up for re-election. Have you gotten any pressure from kind of Republican establishment forces saying, "What are you doing? You're going to help Democrats get elected here"?
No, not at all, actually. I've wondered about that, but everybody's pretty much given me the line of, look, you have to serve your constituents. This is a very, very important issue to the people of Ohio, and so you have to work on it. And so I've gotten no pressure on that front. I mean, look, I'm a Republican. Sherrod and I have worked on this, but I'm going to endorse Sherrod's opponent. I'm going to try to work to get that Republican elected. Nobody doubts that, but at the same time, you have to do the business that the people sent you to do. You can't use partisan politics as an excuse to not do your job every election cycle because, I mean, hell, we're in an election cycle pretty much every year in this town.
So I have seen some opposition in the House that we've looked a little bit about, Troy Niels and the other committee members, and this is where the bill probably will face most of its opposition from, again, inside the Republican Party. Now that President Trump has endorsed that, do you think that that will make a difference in the way that you can try and move this bill through?
Well, it definitely makes a difference. The question is whether, 3 months down the road, after we've already had the debt ceiling fight and hopefully successfully resolved it, where are we actually at on railway safety? The one thing I've realized about this town, I'm a new guy, right? I've been here for 5 months, is that it's very important to get things done when the town's energy is focused on a particular issue. We were really focused on East Palestine 2 months ago.
Yeah, that's right.
We're a little focused on East Palestine today. I'm very focused on it, but the town is focused a little bit on it. Where are we at in 3 months? That, to me, is going to be the biggest hang up. Trump gave us a lot of momentum. The question is, where do we actually land in a few months?
Okay.
There will be another kind of union railroad executive contract struggle in a couple years from now. You just missed, right, the last vote by a couple of weeks. I'm curious, but there was some hint that might be some Republican support for the union, for the rail workers. Are you sensing any more? Do you think you would, if you were in the Senate at the time, would you have voted with the workers? Do you think you would in the future if the contract fight comes to the Senate?
So one, I would have voted with the unions. Two, to his credit, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, a few others actually aligned with the unions there, which was exactly the right thing to do. Look, whether you like the unions or you don't like the unions, it is not the job of the U.S. Senate to do a bailout of the rail industry by settling their labor dispute. It is between the union and the rail industry. Let them settle it. And this is one of the arguments I've actually made about this particular bill is if you're going to, as a U.S. Senate, as a U.S. Congress, bail the railways out of their labor disputes, you can't then come to me and cry free market when we try to force those union or force the railways to observe some proper safety standards. The other crazy thing about this is I can't think of any industry that has such a socialized risk loss business model. If the rail industry crashes a train or sets off a chemical bomb in a place like East Palestine, the taxpayers pick up a huge amount of that tab. If we're going to pick up the tab, we can demand some common sense safety standards.
Well, Pharma would give them a run for their money. So we're talking here about railway. Here is a bigger question, I think, and it kind of gets to the philosophy. You referenced the debt ceiling fight and whether we're going to get through it. Before we walked in here, President Trump actually endorsed saying if we don't cut spending and default, how do you as a Republican who is, I would say divorced at least somewhat from previous conservative orthodoxy, how do you think about the debt ceiling and how do you think about spending?
Well, look, I mean, I'm one of the few Republicans who, during my campaign, I've endorsed critical parts of the social safety net. I've endorsed the idea that every American should have health care, though I may disagree with Bernie Sanders on how we actually get that done. But we do have a massive problem of way too much money going into the economy, which is inflating the prices of a lot of things. And that's actually immiserating a lot of people at the lower and middle income. So I actually do think that we have to get some control of the federal budget here. And I think, look, Joe Biden doesn't like what McCarthy has done, okay? I guarantee you the 217 House Republicans who voted for McCarthy's package, every single one of them could have picked something that they didn't like about that package, but they at least have advanced a solution here. The thing that really bothers me about the president's posture is he sort of stepped back and said my way or the highway. Well, you can't do that. You have to negotiate with these guys. I think we have to cut spending. I think basically the way that I think about it is 2019, the federal government spent $4.4 trillion. Now we're talking about spending $6 to $7 trillion. We can get back to pre-COVID spending levels or something like it without causing immiseration of the poor, and that should be the goal.
And Biden's response to Kevin McCarthy saying, isn't there anything we can cut, was like, hey, look, we can do more on Medicare, prescription drug negotiation. There's corporate tax cuts. There's corporate tax cuts we could roll back. There's tax cuts for the wealthy we could roll back. Where do you come down on that?
Well, look, I think everything should be on the table here. We have to pay the country's debts, and everything should be on the table. Though I think it's interesting, President Trump, during the town hall last night, endorsed a negotiating posture, which is fundamentally rooted in reality. I think the headline is President Trump gives financial advice. He's telling everybody, just go ahead and drive things off the cliff, allow the default.
Sure.
I didn't take that as what he was saying at all. He's talking about the negotiating posture here. You have to be willing to go right to the end if you're in a game of chicken. And so that was sort of how I took that. But look, I mean, if McCarthy and Biden come up with a deal, that is the deal that's going to work for the American people. The one thing that the Senate, at least Senate Republicans, have been pretty consistent on is, look, we don't control this system, right? We are the minority party in the Senate. This fundamentally has to be negotiation between McCarthy and Biden. The deal they come up with is fundamentally the deal that's going to pay the country's debts.
Final question for me, JD. President Trump, the big town hall, we're spending a bunch of our show on it. There's a lot of hand-wringing in Washington and New York City today about democracy, all that. You've endorsed President Trump. Anything changed from the town hall, from the E. Jean Carroll, and all of that as to your posture towards the president?
No, nothing's changed. I obviously, went on to CNN last night, the first time I'd been on CNN in a while, and gave a full-throated endorsement of the president. I thought he did a very good job. What I really liked last night is that was Trump in his very best. He was funny. This town is absurd. A lot of what goes on here is absurd. The people who are sort of pearl clutching and talking about the end of democracy, they're the ones who are going to drive this country off a cliff, because everybody else looks at this and says, it's kind of ridiculous. We should be able to make fun of it. And I think having a little bit of self-awareness and a little bit of humor makes it easier to govern, not harder.
Well, I think the audience agreed with you. As we kept saying, Republican voters liked Trump. I guess
Certainly that particular audience.
That particular
definitely.
audience.
That audience liked him, yeah.
I meant that audience, not necessarily our audience. I'm sure you'll get some hate, but I do too. So it is what it is. Thank you so very much for joining us, sir. We really appreciate your time.
Good to see you guys.
Thank you. And we'll see you guys later.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.